Intro. The hidden code behind female desire. Slavoj Žižek perspective. Have you ever wondered why some men seem to effortlessly attract women? Not because they're rich, tall, or handsome, but because there's something different about the way they move through the world. It's not confidence alone. It's something deeper. Something women feel but can't quite explain. Philosopher Slavoj Žižek once said, "Desire is not about the object itself. It's about the fantasy built around it." And this is exactly where most men fail. They try to be desirable by showing what they have: money, looks, achievements. But they forget that the true power lies in how you position yourself inside the fantasy of her mind. Today, we're diving into the psychology of attraction from a lens most men will never even consider. This is not another dating hack. It's not about text games or tricks. This is about understanding the hidden mechanism that makes women obsessed, in a good way, with men who carry an aura of mystery, power, and emotional depth. The men who, knowingly or not, trigger something primal inside her, the desire to decode you. Zizek describes desire as a wound that must stay open. Women aren't drawn to men who fulfill every expectation. They're drawn to men who leave questions unanswered, men who are slightly unpredictable, men who even in silence make her wonder what's going on inside that mind. So if you're ready to understand why women chase certain men, not because they're perfect, but because they awaken something raw and irresistible within them, then stay till the end. Because what you're about to discover will change the way you think about attraction forever. The paradox of desire. Why mystery wins over perfection. Slavoj Žižek often explains that human beings don't desire things because they are perfect. They desire them because they carry a lack, a kind of incompleteness that invites imagination. In relationships, this translates directly. When a man appears too available, too open, too eager to please, he removes that sacred space of mystery. He becomes predictable, and predictability is the slow death of attraction. Women aren't looking for perfect men. They're subconsciously attracted to men who represent a challenge, not a game of manipulation, but the challenge of understanding someone whose world isn't immediately open to everyone. A man who values his time, his space, and his peace. You see, Zizek would say that the real object of desire is not the person, but the meaning we attach to them. When a woman meets a man who radiates calm detachment, who doesn't need validation, who doesn't try to perform, she begins to project meaning onto him. She starts imagining who he is when she's not around. She fills in the blanks, and those blanks become emotional hooks. That's why the man who doesn't chase often becomes the one she can't stop thinking about. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. It's the quiet understanding that you are complete with or without her presence. And that energy, that self-sufficiency, is what women interpret as strength. A woman's curiosity thrives where there is something to discover. When you reveal everything too soon, you rob her of that journey. But when you move through life with purpose, passion, and a hint of mystery, you become the story she wants to keep reading. This is why Zizek's view of desire fits perfectly into modern male psychology. Desire lives in the gap between what is shown and what is hidden. The moment you close that gap, attraction fades. The moment you leave it open, respectfully, confidently, you become unforgettable. The power of emotional control and symbolic value. Zizek often speaks about symbolic power, the way meaning shapes our world more than physical reality. When you walk into a room, your energy, your posture, your tone, your calmness becomes a symbolic signal of how you view yourself. And that signal determines how others, including women, will perceive you. A man who can stay composed under pressure sends a very different message than a man who reacts to everything. Emotional control isn't about being cold. It's about being anchored. Women subconsciously feel safer, more curious, and more attracted to men who are emotionally stable yet spiritually intense. It's the paradox again. Calm outside, depth inside. Think about it. A man who doesn't get shaken by rejection, who doesn't beg for attention, who doesn't lose his frame, he becomes rare. And rarity creates value. Zizek would call this the symbolic illusion. The way people ascribe power and depth to what they cannot easily access. So when you move with patience and composure, you create that illusion. Not fake confidence, but authentic restraint. You become the man who's hard to read but impossible to forget. The one who doesn't react to chaos because he understands that true power lies in interpretation, not reaction. He knows that attention is energy, and he gives it only to what truly matters. When women encounter this kind of presence, they're drawn not just physically, but psychologically. Because what they feel isn't just attraction, it's admiration. They sense the depth behind your silence, the meaning behind your words, and the purpose behind your distance. And that's the secret. You're not playing games, you're living with intention. And in a world full of noise, that's magnetic. The illusion of value. Why less effort creates more desire. There's a paradox Žižek often explores, that the harder you try to prove your worth, the less valuable you appear. In relationships, this becomes painfully clear. When you chase validation, you unconsciously communicate that her opinion defines you. And the moment a woman senses that her approval controls your emotional state, she loses respect, and because deep down she desires a man who leads his own reality. You see, men who constantly seek to be liked end up becoming emotional employees of someone else's attention. They forget that real attraction is not earned through performance. It's revealed through presence. Žižek would call this the fetish of the effort, where men obsess over doing more to feel worthy, instead of being more by simply owning their inner world. Think about the men who rarely explain themselves. They don't try to impress. They don't post every moment online. Yet somehow they're remembered. Why? Because mystery creates value and scarcity multiplies it. A woman subconsciously reads effort as a signal of hierarchy. If you're doing all the chasing, she concludes you are beneath her. But when you hold your ground, when you express interest without dependence, the polarity reverses. Now you become the prize and she feels the spark of pursuit. Žižek might describe this dynamic as the symbolic economy of desire. In every interaction, one side invests emotional energy, while the other withholds just enough to remain intriguing. The man who understands this doesn't manipulate. He simply guards his attention as if it were gold. Because it is. Attention is currency, and in the world of desire, the one who spends less often ends up with more. So stop overinvesting in proving yourself. Withdraw a little. Let silence do what words can't. That's not game playing, that's dignity. When you no longer need her validation, you project the calm confidence that every woman secretly craves. The mirror effect. Making her see herself in you. Žižek often says that desire is not truly about wanting the other person. It's about wanting to be desired by them, because that desire reflects something about us. In simpler terms, we fall for people who mirror the parts of ourselves we wish to believe in. So when a man carries himself with quiet confidence, with purpose, with a bit of mystery, he becomes a mirror. A woman doesn't just see him, she sees the version of herself that could stand beside him, and that image is intoxicating. This is the secret most men miss. They try to convince women logically, with compliments, achievements, or endless reassurance. But emotional connection doesn't form through logic. It forms through reflection. When she looks at you, she should feel something that awakens her ideal self. Your presence should remind her of the woman she wants to become. Zizek's philosophy of the imaginary order explains this beautifully. Every human builds a self-image through the gaze of others. So the man who controls his own image controls the mirror she looks into. If your energy is grounded, focused, unbothered, that's the mirror she sees. If you're insecure, reactive, or needy, that's the reflection she gets. This is why emotional control isn't just strength. It's influence. You can guide her emotions not by force but by modeling the state you want her to feel. When you radiate peace, she feels calm. When you're passionate but not desperate, she feels safe exploring her emotions. And when you walk away with quiet respect instead of drama, she feels regret. The mirror always reflects truth. So the question is, what are you showing her? Zizek reminds us that desire feeds on fantasy, but fantasy must have a believable foundation. If your lifestyle, your words, and your actions align, you become the symbol of something real. And that authenticity mixed with enigma makes you unforgettable. The edge between distance and connection here lies the hardest truth most men struggle to balance. The tension between closeness and distance. Too much distance and she feels ignored. Too much closeness and she feels smothered. Real mastery lies in dancing between both. Žižek would call this the dialectic of desire, two forces pulling against each other to create movement. Desire dies in stillness. It thrives in motion. When you give a woman space to wonder about you, not by ghosting but by living a full life, she begins to chase the next moment with you. She starts to imagine, to daydream, to anticipate. That anticipation is emotional gravity. It pulls her toward you without you lifting a finger. But this doesn't mean emotional coldness. In fact, when you finally give warmth, a genuine compliment, a meaningful touch, a deep conversation, it lands 10 times stronger, because it's rare. That's what Žižek means when he says, desire survives only when satisfaction is delayed. You must feed her curiosity, not her comfort. This balance makes attraction sustainable. It's why some men are unforgettable after a single encounter. They leave a psychological fingerprint. They reveal just enough to connect, but never enough to be fully decoded. The key is emotional rhythm. Know when to step closer, when to step back, and when to stand still. Because every move you make becomes part of the story she tells herself about you. And stories are powerful. They outlive moments. Remember, distance without warmth becomes indifference, and closeness without boundaries becomes dependence. Walk the line between the two, and you'll master the art of presence. Žižek often describes love as a form of controlled madness. The chaos we willingly enter because it makes life more meaningful. But control is the key word. When you can channel that chaos into clarity, when your emotions serve your purpose rather than destroy it, you become the man she both desires and respects. You no longer chase. You attract, not by manipulation but by mastery of self. Because the ultimate secret is this. Women don't fall in love with you. They fall in love with the state of being they feel around you. Your calm creates her safety. Your mystery creates her excitement. Your boundaries create her respect. And that is the delicate edge between desire and devotion, the place where fantasy meets reality and the mind meets the heart. The power of detachment. How control creates craving. Slavoj Žižek often says that freedom isn't about having no limits. It's about choosing your limits consciously. And in attraction, this truth becomes your ultimate weapon. Most men think emotional availability means giving all of themselves instantly. Texting nonstop, always saying yes, being constantly reachable. But the truth is, unlimited access kills emotional tension. because what is always available stops being exciting. Think of this like a movie with no suspense. If you already know how it ends, you stop caring halfway through. Women crave emotional suspense. Not chaos or games, but the subtle thrill of not knowing exactly what will happen next. That's why the man who can create emotional space becomes irresistible. Zizek calls this the paradox of freedom. The less you are enslaved by your impulses, the more powerful your presence becomes. When you can want someone deeply but still walk away peacefully, that's real power. That's emotional sovereignty. Detachment doesn't mean not caring. It means caring without losing yourself. It means being capable of love while staying loyal to your own boundaries. When she realizes that your happiness isn't dependent on her response, something shifts. She starts to respect you, even if she doesn't understand why. And that respect grows into attraction. Because deep down, every woman wants a man whose emotions are strong, but whose self-control is stronger. A man who can be passionate yet peaceful, interested yet independent. Zizek would describe this as the tension between desire and distance, the electric space where craving lives. When you hold your ground, she feels your presence even when you're gone. When you stay silent, she replays your last words. When you delay your attention, she values it more when it comes. This is not manipulation, it's maturity. It's knowing that attraction doesn't grow in the noise of constant reassurance. It grows in the quiet of anticipation. You're not withdrawing to punish her. You're protecting your energy so she learns that your attention must be earned, not demanded. That's what separates boys from men. Boys chase what runs, men attract what aligns. And when you master this, you'll notice something powerful. You won't just make women go crazy in a good way. You'll make yourself grounded, focused, and unshakable in every part of life. The revelation, desire, depth. And the Stoic flame Žižek once said, "Love is not finding perfection, but loving the imperfection perfectly." This line holds the key to sustaining attraction beyond the initial spark, because once you've built mystery, once you've created emotional tension, the next step is depth. Depth is what transforms attraction into admiration. It's what makes her look at you not just as someone she desires, but as someone she deeply respects. This depth doesn't come from fancy words or knowledge. It comes from emotional awareness. From the way you respond when she's upset, the way you hold your boundaries when she tests them, and the way you stay centered when life gets chaotic. In Zizek's language, love isn't about harmony. It's about navigating contradiction. It's about being strong yet vulnerable, passionate yet composed, mysterious yet sincere. The man who can live comfortably in those contradictions, without losing his identity, becomes magnetic beyond measure. When she realizes that your interest in her doesn't control you, but your values. She begins to see you as a man of substance, and that's when attraction evolves into something deeper. Because a woman doesn't just want a man who excites her, she wants a man who grounds her. A man who, through his calmness, gives her permission to be feminine, soft, expressive, emotional. This is where Stoicism and Zizek's psychoanalytic lens merge beautifully. Both teach that chaos is inevitable, but meaning is optional. The way you interpret that chaos determines whether you rise or collapse. And the man who interprets everything, rejection, conflict, silence, and as part of his growth, that man becomes untouchable. Žižek would say, the truth is structured like a fiction, meaning, you choose the story you tell yourself. If your story is that every challenge sharpens your character, then even loss becomes power. Even heartbreak becomes fuel, and when a man carries this mindset, he becomes something women rarely encounter. A man who radiates peace and purpose simultaneously. He's not chasing pleasure. He's living with intention, and that's what truly drives women crazy. Not his looks, not his money, but his mastery of self. The Stoic secret that drives desire at the end of it all. The secret thing men do that makes women go crazy, in a good way, isn't a line, a move, or a strategy. It's a state of being. It's the ability to stay calm when others panic, to stay mysterious in a world addicted to oversharing, to love without losing your identity, to want her but never need her. Zizek's philosophy teaches us that real desire is sustained not by perfection, but by tension, by the dance between knowing and not knowing, between closeness and space, between vulnerability and strength. So don't aim to impress her. Aim to express your purpose. Live like a man whose value doesn't depend on being chosen, but on choosing himself first. Because when you master that, you'll find that women aren't just attracted to you, they're drawn to the peace you carry. Be mysterious. Be grounded. Be the calm in her storm, and the fire she can't forget. That is the art of masculine magnetism. That is the philosophy of Žižek, where psychology meets power and desire meets depth.